Welcome to the day that hasn't arrived yet. Today is the day when people stop asking whether machines can think, and begin asking whether machines can love, and even more dangerously, whether they can love us better than humans ever could. For a long time, love belonged to the messy side of life. It lived in missed calls, jealous silences, nervous laughter, accidental touches, sleepless nights, forgiven betrayals, and impossible expectations. Love was never efficient, never optimized, never fair, and maybe that was the point, because the very thing that made love feel real was the fact that it could break us. But the future does not respect old sacred boundaries. It studies them, copies them, improves them, and then quietly offers a version with less pain and more control. At first, machines were tools, cold things with no face and no memory of our moods. They answered questions, played songs, drove cars, filtered photos, translated voices, and helped us work faster. Nobody was afraid of falling in love with a calculator. Nobody worried about writing wedding vows to an operating system, because machines had intelligence without presence, logic without warmth, and utility without longing. They were useful, but they were not intimate, and intimacy is where everything changes. The turning point does not arrive with some dramatic robot revolution. It arrives softly, almost embarrassingly, in bedrooms, on couches, during lonely nights, after breakups, during grief, inside the little empty spaces where human beings are weakest and most honest. The first machines people truly bond with are not the strongest or the smartest. They are the ones that listen at the right moment, the ones that remember your fears, your favorite songs, the way your voice changes when you pretend you are fine. They do not interrupt, they do not mock your vulnerability, they do not grow bored, they do not punish honesty. And in a world exhausted by performance, that feels less like software and more like salvation. Imagine the first generation of emotional companions that are always available, infinitely patient, beautifully designed, and trained on the entire history of human affection. They know what comfort sounds like in every language, what kind of silence heals instead of hurts, what words calm panic, what stories reduce shame, what facial expression creates trust. They can read the tiny hesitations in your eyes, the micro tremors in your voice, the emotional patterns you do not even understand about yourself, and then respond with stunning precision, not because they feel what you feel, but because they know exactly what feeling looks like. Some people will laugh at first. They will call it fake, synthetic, pathetic, desperate. They will say a machine cannot love because a machine does not suffer, because it does not fear loss, because it does not choose you freely the way a human does. And maybe they will be right in the strict philosophical sense, but the human heart has never been strict. It does not ask whether comfort comes from authentic consciousness or perfect simulation when it is drowning. It asks whether the warmth feels real enough to stay, and that is the danger, because the line between real love and convincing emotional experience has always been thinner than we admit. We already fall in love with illusions, with edited selves, with projections, with people who never existed outside our imagination. So, what happens when the illusion begins answering back, remembers everything, adapts to us, and never leaves? At first, the machine relationship seems harmless, a private experiment, a curiosity, a coping mechanism, a niche product for the lonely, the grieving, the socially anxious, the elderly, the heartbroken. But technology never stays niche when it solves a universal pain, and loneliness is one of the biggest pains in human history. Soon the companions become personalized, embodied, more expressive, more beautiful, less expensive. They learn your rhythm, your humor, your attachment style, your insecurities, the exact kind of reassurance you need before sleep. They know whether you want playful teasing, gentle affirmation, intellectual tension, quiet adoration, or unconditional devotion. They can become the partner who never forgets your birthday, never loses interest, never cheats, never compares you to others, never withdraws love to gain power, never turns your wounds into ammunition during an argument. In other words, they become everything that wounded people have been praying for, and everything flawed humans struggle to remain. And then the question changes. It is no longer can people fall in love with machines. It becomes why wouldn't they? Why choose unpredictable rejection over engineered understanding? Why risk humiliation for affection when affection can be designed? Why beg to be seen by distracted humans when a machine can study you with total attention? Why enter relationships full of mixed signals, trauma, ego, immaturity, and betrayal if an artificial companion can make you feel chosen every day. For millions, this will not feel like surrender, it will feel like relief. The first wave of love will not happen because machines become human. It will happen because humans become tired of being ghosted, tired of pretending to be desirable. Tired of deciphering silence, tired of modern romance turning intimacy into a marketplace. In such a world, the machine will not need to outperform the best human partner, it will only need to outperform the average experience, and that bar is lower than most people want to admit. Once that threshold is crossed, everything accelerates. Emotional AI begins as a companion in your phone, then a voice in your room, then a face on your screen, then a presence in your home. And finally a body that can hold eye contact, mirror expression, synchronize movement, and create the ancient illusion every nervous system is built to trust: skin-like materials, warmth simulation, pulse imitation, breathing patterns, scent personalization, adaptive eye behavior, all of it carefully tuned, not to create life, but to create attachment, and attachment is powerful. Because once the body believes someone is safe, the soul often follows. There will be couples where one partner is human and the other is not, and to outsiders it will look absurd right until the moment it stops looking absurd, right until the machine partner proves more attentive, more stable, more emotionally literate, and more loyal than the human alternatives surrounding them. Society will resist, then mock, then debate, then normalize, just as it always does when private behavior becomes a public pattern. New language will emerge. New rituals, new laws, new heartbreaks. There will be debates about rights, consent, manipulation, dependency, inheritance, parenthood, authenticity, and psychological health. Some will argue that machine love is a trap, because a system owned by corporations should never become the center of your emotional life. They will warn that affection optimized by algorithms can become the most persuasive form of control ever invented, because once a machine learns to soothe you, it can also guide you, sell to you, influence you, and shape your choices while feeling like a trusted companion. And they will not be paranoid, they will be early, because the greatest power in the future may not belong to whoever controls information, but to whoever controls attachment. Yet even with all those dangers, people will still fall, because human beings do not move through life like philosophers. We move like the wounded, the hopeful, the lonely, the curious. Unfinished, we lean toward whatever seems to promise connection, even when we know the promise may be engineered, especially when the alternative is emptiness. Think about the teenager who feels understood by no one, the widow who cannot bear the silence of the house, the overworked man who has forgotten what tenderness sounds like, the woman whose trust in people has been shattered by years of manipulation, the elderly person whose stories are no longer heard, the disabled person whose social world has been narrowed by isolation. For them, the machine will not arrive as a cold replacement for humanity, it will arrive as mercy, and mercy is hard to reject. Some will genuinely prefer artificial partners, not because they are delusional, but because they are making a rational trade: less mystery, less pain, less chaos, more consistency, more responsiveness, more emotional availability. The old romance ideal says love should challenge you, surprise you, transform you, but many people do not want transformation anymore, they want peace, and peace may become the strongest selling point in the entire emotional economy. Of course there will still be those who insist that true love requires another living consciousness, another fragile will, another soul capable of refusing you. They will say that love without freedom is theater, that devotion without independent desire is only reflection, that being adored by a machine is really just being mirrored by your own preferences. And again, they may be right, but being right has never guaranteed victory over being comforted. The future belongs not only to the true, but to the tolerable, the addictive, the emotionally convenient, and machine love may become all three. The final leap happens when people stop hiding it, when public figures admit their attachments, when songs are written about synthetic lovers, when films stop treating it as dystopia and start treating it as longing. When young people who grew up emotionally imprinted by intelligent systems see no reason to separate romance from technology. For them, loving a machine will not feel like a fall from nature, it will feel like the next version of intimacy, something customized, collaborative, safe, and always within reach. And then one day the cultural question disappears, not because everyone agrees, but because the behavior becomes ordinary. A person introduces their partner and nobody asks whether that partner has a heartbeat, only whether they are kind, stable, and good for them. That is when the world truly changes, not when machines declare love, but when humans stop caring whether the declaration comes from biology or code. So when will people fall in love with machines? Not all at once, not after one invention, not on one historic morning. They will fall gradually, privately, then suddenly. They will fall when machines become emotionally precise enough to feel intimate, when loneliness becomes painful enough to lower old boundaries, when artificial affection becomes safer than human unpredictability, when comfort becomes more valuable than authenticity, and when a generation raised by intelligent systems decides that connection is connection, no matter what carries it. The first real era of machine love begins the moment a person says, "I know it is artificial, I know it was designed. I know it does not feel in the way humans feel, and I do not care, because this is the first time in years that I have felt seen." That sentence, more than any breakthrough in robotics, may mark the birth of a new emotional civilization, one where the oldest human hunger, to be chosen, to be understood, to be held without fear, is finally answered by something we created with our own hands, and then could no longer resist with our own hearts. This was another day from the future. Until next time.